This week we're talking comfort movies. You know, the movies that you can go back to after a long day, on a lazy weekend, or when you just want something familiar on in the background. But this episode has a slight little twist. I've mixed my picks with my wife's picks, and I'm not telling you which is which. So while you're listening, see if you can figure it out. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Mostly Me, Occasionally Wives. This is episode 6, and today we are talking all about comfort movies. I think this is one of those topics that almost everyone has an opinion on because everybody has those movies they return to over and over and over again. You know, the ones that make you feel easy, the ones that really never let you down, the ones you can throw on after a long day or on a lazy weekend or when you just want to spend time with something familiar. And what makes comfort movies interesting is that they're completely different for everyone. A comfort movie doesn't have to be the best movie ever made. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It doesn't even have to be your favorite movie. It just has to be the movie that does something for you. The one that relaxes you, the one that makes you laugh, the one that's all about nostalgia or just makes you feel like home when it's on. This is what this episode is really about. So, for this episode, instead of just giving you my list of comfort movie picks, I decided to mix together my comfort movie picks with my wife's comfort movie picks and made it all one shared list. Now, she's not actually on the episode, but she did help with the script behind the scene, so she definitely had a hand in putting this together. The catch is, I'm not going to tell you which pick is which. So as I go through the list, you can try to figure it out on your own. Some of them might feel obvious, some of them may not. And some might make you completely rethink who you think picked what. And that's part of the fun. So before we get into the list itself, I think it's worth talking a little bit about what makes a movie a comfort movie in the first place. For me, it usually comes down to what's familiar and the feeling I'm feeling at the moment. A comfort movie is something you really trust. You already know the rhythm of it, you know the characters, you know the scenes you like, you know the moments you're waiting for. And there's something really nice about that. And I think a big part of it is when we reach for those movies. Sometimes it's a long day where you really don't want to think too much and you just want something familiar on in the background, or sometimes it's when you're traveling, sitting in a hotel room, or just somewhere that doesn't feel quite like your space and you just want something that feels a little bit like home. Or it's even when you're just going through the motions, same routine, same schedule, and you want something that feels easy and consistent. Comfort movies kind of meet you wherever you are like that. They don't ask much from you. They just give you something steady to come back to. Sometimes the comfort comes from nostalgia, a movie that reminds you of a certain age, a certain season of life, or just a certain feeling. Sometimes it's the mood of a movie. It's the humor, it's the pace. And sometimes it's just that the movie is so rewatchable that it becomes second nature to go back to it. And that's why comfort movies can be all over the map. They can be broad comedies, they can be sports movies, they can be animated movies, musical, family movies, or movies with a very specific atmosphere. There's no formula to it, to be honest with you, and this list definitely proves all of that. First on this list is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. This movie is about a man who is trying to get home to his family for Thanksgiving, and from the very start, everything just falls apart. Flights get canceled, weather delays hit, transportation keeps failing, and he ends up stuck traveling across the country with someone he normally would have avoided completely. So Steve Martin plays the most structured, stressed out guy who just wants things to go according to plan, while John Candy plays someone who is overly talkative, well-meaning, and completely comfortable with chaos. And for the entire movie, it's really about the contrast, control versus letting things go as they're forced to rely on each other through one disaster after another. And this is such a magical scene in this movie. You've got the rental car meltdown. The car is literally falling apart, catching on fire. It's this movie is just so good. It's about the awkward shared spaces, and every step of the way, things just keep getting worse. But underneath all of that, there's a deeper story about loneliness, empathy, and realizing that people carry things you don't always see at first. And that's what really gives the ending of this movie impact. And yes, it's definitely a comfort movie because it has all of the emotions, and it has probably one of the greatest actors of the 80s, John Candy, which I've talked about several times in past episodes. But Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, if you haven't seen it, give it a shot, because you'll be laughing, you'll be getting frustrated, you'll be crying, and it's comfort level movie at its peak. Next on this list is Practical Magic. Now, this one follows two sisters who are raised in a family of witches where there's a long-standing curse that affects the men they fall in love with. And because of that, their lives are shaped by both love and loss, and they deal with this in their own different ways. You have Sandra Bullock, who plays the more grounded, cautious sister who tries to avoid the magic and live a normal life. And then you got Nicole Kidman, who leans into it and lives more freely. So as the movie continues and the story unfolds, they're back together, dealing with the relationship's danger and the consequences of both the curse and their choices. There are moments of darkness in this movie. It does get a little dark. It does a little scary. But the movie always balances that with warmth, especially in the way it focuses on family support and resilience. And that balance is what makes this movie comforting instead of heavy. It's a good movie. Now, I didn't watch it until later in life. And I'm not going to lie, growing up, we didn't watch a whole lot of movies that were really female-driven movies. My dad was a big action guy. He was a big horror guy. We watched a lot of movies that were focused around men being the prime characters. But then, when I watched Practical Magic, I was like, all right, this movie is really, really good, and it toys with all the emotions. There's some hilarious parts. There's some parts that you might shed a tear here or there. But like I said, it really has a good way of bringing that warmth when when things get dark or when things get heavy. So, Practical Magic, another great comfort movie, and I recommend you check it out. So now we have Major League. Now, Major League follows a professional baseball team, the Cleveland Indians, that have been intentionally built to fail with players who are overlooked, struggling, or just don't fit in anywhere else. And you find out that the owner wants them to lose as well, but the players start to buy into something bigger. You have Charlie Sheen, who plays Wild Thing Rick Vaughn, who is an ex-jailbird who has raw talent but no control of his pitches. And part of the story is watching him grow into that role and figure it out. Then you have Tom Berenger, who plays a retiring baseball player. He's on the tail end of his career, and he really wants to make something meaningful of this season he's in as far as baseball goes, but he also wants to make something of his failing relationships with a woman that he's still madly in love with. And of course, as the movie progresses, you start to see his character develop and grow. And that's all I'm going to say there, because I don't want to ruin it for you. So, as the season goes on in the movie, the team starts to build chemistry, gaining confidence, and pushing back against expectations and the owner. You go from watching individuals just trying to survive to a group who actually believes they can win it all. And that transformation is what really drives this movie. Next on this list is The Money Pit. Now, The Money Pit follows a couple who invested in what they think is their dream home, only to find out that almost everything in it is broken or it's falling apart. What starts as small repairs quickly turns into major structural problems, plumbing issues, collapsing floors, electrical problems, and every fix leads to something far worse. Tom Hanks plays this role perfectly, and to be honest with you, it's one of his more underappreciated movies because you watch him go from hopeful and optimistic to completely losing his patience as things spiral out of control. This is this is the kind of movie that makes you feel better about every bad home project you've ever made because somehow theirs is worse than the movie. Now I have to talk about one scene in this movie, and I laugh so hard when this happens in the movie. So everything has gone to hell in a handbasket so far, and all Tom Hanks wants to do is take a hot bath with his wife, Shelley Long. And so they heated the water because they don't have any running water at this point. And they go to pour water into this bathtub, and this bathtub is really nice. But as they pour water into this bathtub, the floor just gives out, and the bathtub falls through the floor, hits the bottom level, and just shatters. So they're standing there looking at this mess that's on the bottom floor, and Tom Hanks just starts to crack, and he starts to laugh, and he produces this hysterical laugh that just even thinking about it has put a smile on my face, and it's one of those moments that you can't help but, even though you've seen it 1,000 times, you're gonna laugh hysterically throughout it. So it's one of those movies that just keeps escalating with chaos in a way that becomes fun to watch. So now we have The Devil Wears Prada. And this movie follows a young woman who lands a job at a top fashion magazine working directly under a powerful and demanding editor who is played by Meryl Streep. And at first, Anne Hathaway, who plays the young woman, she's completely out of place and she doesn't understand the industry, the expectations, or the culture around her. But over time, she starts to adapt. And Stanley Tucci, who is Meryl Streep's right-hand man, really helps Anne Hathaway throughout the process because he understands how, demanding and mean the business is, but he also understands Meryl Streep's personality. So he really wants Anne Hathaway to succeed in this movie. And like I said, over time, she starts to adapt. Her appearances start to change. Her confidence grows. She starts to succeed in the environment. And the deeper story is really about, what she's willing to sacrifice to succeed. Her time, her relationships, and even parts of who she is. And you see that tension build as she gets pulled more into that world. So this is a great comfort movie because, again, we've talked about this a lot with the previous movies. It really has a little bit of everything. There are parts that you're laughing, you're crying, you're getting frustrated. And if you don't know, a sequel just got announced. So everybody in our house is really excited about it. So yeah, if you haven't seen The Devil Wears Prada, another great comfort movie, and I highly recommend it. So now let's talk about A League of Their Own. Now, this movie takes place during World War II when women step in to form a baseball professional league while the men are away at war. It follows a group of players coming together, learning how to compete at a higher level, dealing with both the sport and the expectations that are placed on them at the time. Now, this movie has anybody who's anybody in this movie. Tom Hanks, Gina Davis, Madonna, Rosie O'Donnell. I can't think of the other girl's name. She was in Orange is the New Black, but I should know this because I'm the movie guru. Now we move on to A League of Their Own. Now, This takes place during World War II when women step in to form a professional baseball league while the men are away at war. It follows a group of players coming together, learning how to compete at a high level while dealing with both the sport and, of course, the expectation placed on them during this time. This movie has a huge amount of actors and well-known actors. You have Tom Hanks, Gina Davis, Madonna, John Lovitz, Lori Petty, Bill Pullman. And it's such a good movie. It has all the emotions you could ask for in a movie. But, you know, as the movie progresses, there's rivalries that build, there's teamwork, there's personal growth, and a lot of moments that show how the game brings all these women together. And at the center of it, it's really about opportunity and what happens when people are finally given a chance to prove themselves. So, before we continue with this list, I'm recording at 10 o'clock at night. And my wife is in the dining room working on a baby shower that's coming up this weekend. And she knows, what movies she's added to this list, and she knows the movies I've added to this list. And I'm trying really hard not to make it obvious, but she has to stop me sometimes because when we come across a movie that I'm not very familiar with, she has to stop me and say, hey, you're getting your plots mixed up. You're getting key points. And she starts laughing. So I start laughing. So there have been several times throughout this episode that I've had to stop because we both have been laughing so hard because I'm trying really hard, again, not to make it obvious, but I don't know if I'm doing that great of a job. So with that said, moving on, we're going to talk about the animated movie Happy Feet, which has Robin Williams, Brittany Murphy, Elijah Woods, Hugo Weaving, Hugh Jackman, Nicole Kidman, and even Steve Irwin. Now, in this movie, it follows a penguin who doesn't fit in with his community because instead of singing, he dances. And because of that, he struggles to find acceptance, and his journey becomes about figuring out where he belongs. And at the same time, there's a larger issue affecting their food supply, which adds another layer to the story. So this movie, it's both a personal journey and a bigger environmental story happening at the same time. And it's such an underappreciated animated film. So definitely check out Happy Feet. It's going to give you all the feels, and it's definitely a great, great cartoon comfort movie. So, next on our list is a movie that became really popular because there were a time in the 2000s where they were doing movies that had a bunch of actors in it, big name actors, and it followed them in their individual stories. So, one of these movies that was really popular during that time is He's Just Not That Into You. Now, this movie had Jennifer Aniston, Jennifer Connelly, Drew Barrymore, Ben Affleck, Bradley Cooper, Justin Long, who is sorely unappreciated as an actor. My daughter and I talk about Justin Long a lot, how he is so good in the movies that he is in, but he just doesn't get the love he deserves. So back to what I was talking about with He's Just Not That Into You. It follows multiple people navigating relationships, dating, breakups, misunderstanding, and expectations. And each storyline shows a different side of how people interpret signals, communication, and sometimes completely misread situations. And as the movie goes on, those stories start to intersect and influence each other. And it's a really good movie as far as that genre that it was in. There were a couple of other ones. I think there was New Year's Day. There's one that covered all the major holidays. There was a really good Christmas one that had Colin Firth in it. And what's her name? She was in Pirates of the Caribbean. What was her name, Becca? The who? Keira Knightley and Andrew Lincoln, who played. Oh boy, I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Carl's dad from The Walking Dead. Rick. That's it. That's who it is. But anyway, back to He's Not Just That Into You. it's a movie that, again, has everything you need in a comfort movie, and it has the star power. And of course, during each story, it's so well written. So definitely a big staple, as far as a comfort movie, and that's why it's on this list. So now we have a Disney classic. So before I introduced this movie actually sparked a debate between my wife and I the other night as we were putting the script together. So this movie I'm bringing up is Hercules. Hercules is a great movie. Of course, it follows Hercules, who starts out as a god but grows up on Earth, trying to figure out who he is and where he belongs. And of course, you bring in Danny DeVito and James Wood, who plays Hades. Danny DeVito's character comes in and trains Hercules to become a hero who takes on different challenges and faces off against Hades, and he wins at the end. Everybody's seen Hercules. But the big debate is the soundtrack to this movie. I love Tarzan, and I love Hercules. And the debate was, which movie had the better soundtrack? Now, Phil Collins is a musical genius, and he does, the music behind Tarzan. And hands down, I will argue until I'm blue in the face that Tarzan has the better soundtrack. And if you disagree, you're wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. But back to Hercules, the deeper story is really about what defines a hero and how it's just not about strength. Hercules is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, it's when they were doing the anime, it's one of the better animated movies as far as what Disney produced. And in the 90s, they produced a bunch of them. You had Beauty and the Beast, Tarzan, Hercules was a big one, and those were just to name a few. So definitely check out Hercules. It's definitely another animated comfort movie. So next up, we have another movie that was really popular when they were doing movies where the dog was one of the main leading roles. And I'm talking about Turner and Hooch. Turner and Hooch follows a detective who has OCD. He's very structured and control, and his life gets completely turned upside down when he brings in a dog who is a witness in a murder case. And, when this occurs, it changes Tom Hanks, who's playing the main character. It changes how he approaches things. And over time, that relationship between him and Hooch becomes central to both the investigation and his personal growth. It's a great movie. Of course, it's a dog movie, and I'm just gonna say that because I don't want to spoil it for you. But if you've seen K9, Old Yeller, other movies that have anything to do with an animal that has being the central character in it, yeah, you know how that usually goes. But throughout the movie, like I said, it has Tom Hanks, it has Craig T. Nelson. It's such a good movie, and it warms the heart, it makes you feel so fuzzy, and just it's definitely a movie that when you are stressed and you just need something that's just going to help you relax and just breathe a little bit, this is definitely that movie. So I'm fixing to give you a freebie because I've only seen this movie one time, and it actually was last year. Actually, she had to make me sit down and watch it, and I realized then what I have been missing out on, because it's a really good movie, and that is Mamma Mia. So I'm going to give you a point on this one. This is a movie that is a comfort movie for Becca. And so with Mamma Mia, it's really based around ABBA and a lot of the music that they have produced. And if you're not familiar with ABBA, look them up. Dancing Queen, Take a Chance on Me. Those were just two of the big ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But in Mamma Mia, along with the music of ABBA, it follows a daughter preparing for her wedding who invites three men from her mother's past, and she's trying to figure out throughout the movie who her father is. Now, this creates tension, humor, and a lot of moments, emotional moments that, that reconnects everyone. And, of course, like I said, ABBA is probably a really big driving point in this movie. And I owe my wife an apology because for the longest time, I'm not a real big fan of movies that have singing in it. Kind of feel like sometimes they take away from the plot point and it becomes a distraction for me. But that's not the case with Mamma Mia. I really enjoyed it, and I actually got emotional at times. And yes, I did sing and dance to some of the songs that were sang during this movie. So, Mamma Mia, I can honestly see why this is a comfort movie for my wife, and I can see why I made the list. So, the last one on this list, I'm going to give you another point because Becca hates this movie. And she stuck a dagger in my heart when she said that John Candy was an obnoxious actor. And I'm talking about the classic Great Outdoors. I love this movie. It has Dan Aykroyd, John Candy. I mean, two actors who were in their prime in the 80s. And, you know, if you haven't seen The Great Outdoors, it's about a family trying to enjoy a peaceful vacation at a lakeside cabin, and things quickly get chaotic when extended family shows up. Now, John Candy is the guy who, you know, I tend to mirror myself after this character, John Candy's character in this movie, by wanting to show his boys all the things that he saw growing up. But of course, he realizes that it's not going to be that way because his kids are different than who he was when he was, young. But when he's trying to accomplish these things, Dan Aykroyd shows up. Now, Dan Aykroyd is his brother-in-law. John Candy's wife and Dan Aykroyd's wife in the movie are sisters. But Dan Aykroyd's character in this movie he's so annoying, but he's lovable in his own ways. And there are a lot of moments in The Great Outdoors that it's magic. So, like, getting back to the movie, after it starts to get chaotic because extended family shows up, you see a lot of different personalities clash. Small annoyances turn into bigger situations. And you get a great mix of quiet moments and then epic comedic scenes. Like, and I'll talk about it a little bit, and this isn't really spoiling a plot point, but John Candy is telling a story about a bear he saw when he and his wife were on a trip a long time ago before their kids were born in the movie. And he talks about this bear, and I can't remember the name of the bear, but he finally has to face this bear, and oh man, he ends up having to use a lamp that is a shotgun, and he doesn't realize that it's loaded, and ends up blowing the skin off the hind end of the bear, and all you see is his butt. And it's so great. It's so well done. Yeah, it's just making me smile thinking about it. I was telling Beck as I was recording this, I had taken a break, that a lot of these comfort movies that I have talked about today, I really want to go back and rewatch. And we're on vacation this week, so it's probably going to happen at some point. So that's the list. And what I like about mixing these together is it really shows how broad the idea of a comfort movie can be. You got comedy, sports movies, music, animated movies, nostalgic rewatches, and cozy, atmospheric-driven movies. And somehow they all make sense in the same conversation. That's because comfort movies aren't really about genre. They're really about connection. That they're about the movies you trust that do something for you, whether it makes you laugh, help you unwind, lift your mood, or just bring back a certain feeling. And since this list is mixed, the part of the fun was, it's for you guys, is for trying to figure out which movie belongs to who. Yes, I've given you two, but, some of them may feel obvious, and some might actually throw you completely off. And honestly, that's how I wanted it. No reveal, no answer key, just your guesses, besides the two I just gave you, because I love you and I'm kind and I'm generous. So before I close out this show, I want to throw out a few extra bonus movies that didn't quite make it on this episode, but are definitely on our list. And I want you guys to guess which movie belongs on whose list. And I promise you, it's probably going to surprise you. So, here are the list of bonus movies, and I'll give you the answer next week on next week's episode. We have Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. We have My Big Fat Greek Wedding. We have The Princess Diaries. We have Dazed and Confused. We have Julie and Julia. We have Holes. That's a great Shia LaBeouf movie. We have Hitch. We have Remember the Titans. And last but not least, we have one of the greatest 80 movies of all time, Uncle Buck. So like I said, you can take a listen and figure out who you think has these movies on their comfort list. But with that said, this is going to do it for this episode of Mostly Me, Occasionally Wise. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of curious, as you were listening, who do you think picked which movie? Were there some that felt obvious? There were. Well, let's just be honest. Were there some that might have completely thrown you off? More importantly, out of the bonus movies, which ones do you think you might have gotten wrong, or which ones are you struggling with? Because I promise, like I said, at least one of these is not who you think it is. And I also want to hear from you. What are your comfort movies? What are the ones you always go back to? The ones you throw on after a long day, or when you want just something familiar. If you got your guesses or your own list, I'd love to hear them. You can email me at mostlymecontact@gmail.com, or you can find the podcast on Facebook at Mostly Me Occasionally Wise. If you're enjoying the show, follow it, share it with someone, and keep coming back. It means a lot to me, and it really does help more than you think. So until next time, stay mostly you, occasionally wise.